This evening, we'll be talking about the importance of play in providing effective early years learning for refugee children. We're joined by an excellent panel of experts who've been working on developing this approach in Kyaka II refugee camp in Uganda. To give you a little bit of background, Children on the Edge began working with Congolese refugee communities here in 2019. We began by supporting communities to renovate or rebuild early learning centres, but buildings were expensive and they couldn't come close to accommodating the thousands of children that needed education. So when COVID lockdown hit, like many schools, we could only teach in small outdoor groups. So as we created these groups close to children's homes, we realised that by taking the learning to where the children are, we could actually reach those children that were cut off from education. So these small group lessons developed into what is now known as cluster learning approach, which is currently providing over 5,000 children with early years education. So we'd like to take this opportunity to say a special thank you to players of People's Postcode Lottery. Funds raised by them and award Postcode Education Trust are helping to make this work possible. And huge thanks also goes to Coles Medlock, who have supported this programme by providing vital match funding through the Big Give. Some of you joining may have had your donations matched in the Big Give. So the panel, we're going to be finding out more about clusters and especially how they're developing the use of play from our brilliant panel. Let me introduce you to them. Panel, please wave when I introduce you. We have Solomon Mutumba, Chief Operations Officer from Children on the Edge Africa, based in Uganda. We have Kauthura Gibwa, who is a Programme Officer, also from Children on the Edge Africa. We have Priyanka Handaram, who is the founder and CEO of Learn to Play, and she's in Botswana. Then we have Gemma Driver, Monitoring and Evaluation Manager from Children on the Edge UK. She's based from Uganda this week. As you can see, she's with Solomon and currently in the refugee camp. Gemma is stepping in for Sarah, who's our International Education Officer, who sadly has had a bereavement and can't be with us. So we're sending Sarah all of our love. The panel are really keen to have your questions, so do keep them coming using the chat function that you should see down the bottom of your screen, and later on we might be able to just bring you into the meeting. All that is left to say before we start is that you might hear various terms that are a bit unfamiliar to you. So if you hear the term caregiver, that would be more like what we understand as preschool teacher. And if you hear the term TOT, then that stands for trainer of teachers, which can be a bit of a mouthful. So often our staff will use the term TOT. But if any other confusing acronyms come up, then we'll explain them as we go. So I would like to start by going to Solomon, talking a little bit about the background to this innovation. Solomon, could you describe what Kyaka II refugee settlement is like? I think you just have to unmute.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much, Esther. And let me just take it on by providing a brief background about our refugee policy in Uganda. So our refugee policy in Uganda has a number of impressive aspects, and one of which is the open door policy to all asylum seekers, regardless of their nationality, and granting refugees relative freedom of movement and the right to seek employment wherever they want. And the government also provides each refugee family with a piece of land for exclusive use. So in so doing, the government projects refugees as economic actors and rather not burdens. This makes Uganda the largest host in Africa of refugees, with over 1,500,000 refugees. So in Uganda, we have about 13 refugee settlements, and Kyaka is just one of them with 119,000 dwellers, which is 8% of the entire refugee community. So, but in as much as, the government provides refugee families with a piece of land, it's not big enough for them to grow enough food. And so many of them live hand to mouth. So the other important aspect is that Kyaka is also classified by 2 generations of refugees, and some have stayed longer than 6 years, and these are predominantly the Rwandese refugees, and others are fairly new, and these are predominantly the Congolese refugees. Esther?
Thank you. Could you tell us a little bit more about the cluster program itself?
All right, thank you so much. So as you hinted about earlier on, Esther, the cluster learning is a community-driven educational initiative designed to provide access and engaging learning experiences to children near their homes. And the program emphasizes child-centered, bite-sized lessons delivered in the children's language by trained teachers who are also refugees from their community. And this fosters a sense of familiarity and safety for both children and parents. And through this active involvement of the community, cluster learning ensures ownership and sustainability of the program. So these kind of lessons that are delivered are prioritized play-based and child-led activities, focusing on holistic development, and they are supplemented by home learning support. And the other interesting aspect of our program is that our teachers receive ongoing training and support, and they also get financial empowerment through microloans and savings groups, which enables them to maintain motivation and connection with the community. So this cluster learning approach not only improves enrollment and attendance rates, but also enhances the overall learning outcomes by nurturing the social, emotional, and physical development. Thank you. Over to you, Esther.
Yeah. So play is a fundamental part of our early learning childhood education, a huge part of the cluster learning program. Priyanka, why is play such a vital tool for early years learning?
Thank you, Esther. And first, let me just say thank you for inviting me to be part of the panel. I've loved all the work that we've done on behalf of Learn to Play with Children on the Edge, and having been to Uganda twice. So it's a real pleasure and privilege to be able to contribute here as well. And thank you to everybody else for signing on. I think play, I mean, for me, it's almost like second nature to think of play with children. I can't imagine separating childhood and play because it's just what children do. They automatically engage in play. But to tie that into learning doesn't feel as natural in many learning environments. And I think that's where we sometimes have to spell it out and break it down. And I think that the first part is interest and motivation. Obviously, when children are playing, it's inherently engaging for children. So play-based learning becomes engaging for children. And when they're interested and motivated, they're more likely to actively participate. They're more likely to explore new ideas, and then also retain what they learn because they're learning by doing. And I think we can relate to that as adults. So when we're actually engaged in something, we'll never forget that experience because we've learned by incorporating all of our senses. But through play, children develop, we've got 6 key domains that we try and cover in early childhood development. And I think through play, children develop across all of those. So the first one that comes to mind is language and communication. Automatically, I think children, it's naturally fostering language development when children are playing. They want to engage in storytelling or role play or conversations, and that helps them to develop their vocabulary, their language structure, communication skills, even nonverbal language skills come through in those types of activities. It fosters imagination and creativity when they're role playing or playing with their dolls and teddy bears, which in turn fosters problem-solving skills. And all of these are essential life skills that they're going to then carry with them through the rest of their academic, learning, but also for work and careers. So, I think for me, it's really hard to separate learning and play, but it's just one of the ways to break it down.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Priyanka. Gemma, I wanted to ask you about the context with the refugee children, why early learning is particularly important for refugee children.
Well, obviously all children, those years are key for all children, but particularly for refugee children because they're so lacking in so many things. So especially play-based learning is really helpful for processing trauma and emotions through play and through learning through play. It gives them routine and some stability. It helps them to learn to make friends, and it helps them to feel more safe and secure. And it also prepares them for a very uncertain future, and also helps them to learn the local language. But it's very difficult because parents themselves are often traumatized, and they're also suffering from a lack of stability, or they don't possibly understand yet the importance of playing with their children. So they're really lacking from that.
Yeah, thank you, Gemma. Gemma helps to monitor and evaluate the programme, and that's why she's out in Uganda at the moment working with the team. But Kathura, if we can go over to you. Kathura's with the cluster groups almost on a daily basis, although she's in Kampala right now having taken an exam. I wondered if you could tell us, you might need to unmute your mic, Kathura, and just tell us a little bit about what a cluster group is like each day.
Thank you, Esther. Cluster group a day comes in when children arrive. They really come to play. They are welcomed by their teachers. The teachers already prepared the playstations where the children are going to arrive and play with their creativity as the teacher is receiving others and waiting for them to become more. So after the children they go to the stations, use different natural materials, because in our context we are collecting materials everywhere from the environment, and the children enjoy to do with them like materials like sticks, leaves, bottle tops, plastic bottles, and so on. So as they are playing, the teacher guides them. Then after they go to the circle time, which welcomes them, which brings them to life and welcomes them that you are at school. It is me, your teacher, your caregiver. I love you, and be at peace. So they have an opportunity to play, they have an opportunity to express themselves, they have an opportunity to sit down, listen to a story which closes the day. They always have story, they have physical fun, and that is how our day runs, with the help of a caregiver. Thank you, Esther.
That's brilliant. And in your experience, as you've been watching the cluster groups along with the other TOTS trainer of trainers, what kind of changes have you seen in the children since you've introduced more play into the cluster groups?
When we introduced play in our cluster groups around Kyaka II,
I think we've lost Kathura a bit.
We found out that the children are more happy. Children are no longer worried. Then you look at the hygiene, they are clean. They come to school when they are very happy. It is even influencing the parents to bring the children at school. And hello, are you picking me now?
Yes.
Can I continue?
Yes.
Thank you. We are talking about part of their life is play, so they love to come to. You can hear me? Okay. Children love to come to school because there is play. They are always anxious to come to school to see what activity is their caregiver is going to give them. So they come. They are excited to come to the cluster learning. They feel free when they are at the cluster. They are able to converse, to converse with their teachers, with their peers. Even now, when they see a new face, they welcome them. They have changed in their behaviors. They're non-timid. You really see that these children are out. They have really learned to express themselves lively.
And has that been challenging? Have there been a number of challenges in getting play going in the cluster groups?
Yes, there are a number of challenges, like for the case of the parents and the wider community who are struggling with understanding the connection between play and learning. So in our community, in our context, people believe that children have to, and a caregiver is here and they have to do the lecturing. So when they see that children are playing, they are really asking themselves, are these children really learning? So they are still struggling with understanding play and learning. And now with the introduction, so far we have taken a term, and you see that now they have started appreciating, because these children come back at home, give them what they have got from the clusters.
That's brilliant. Yeah, I remember Sarah telling us that the parents were more concerned about the children coming home and learning their ABCs and their 1, 2, 3s, and that if there's anything beyond that at the start, they weren't as interested, but they're just starting to understand how important it is for their children, and seeing other skills developed, and confidence and self-expression and kindness, which I found really exciting. I know, Priyanka, you've learned to play programs. There's been a lot of research and evidence demonstrating that play can have a huge impact on children's well-being and their social and emotional development. And I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about that.
Well, I think, it starts a little bit with what Kauthara was saying, is initially children can sometimes be a bit apprehensive about coming into a school setting or an education setting. But when it's playful and you see that stations are designed to be enjoyed by them, and they're pre-designed to what children's interests are, they're more likely to want to come in, and creates that sense of belongingness, that I belong here. These are things that I know how to use, I know what to do, especially when you use the local environment in them. So I think that from a well-being perspective, the first thing that I would say play does is make children feel like this is for them, right? Like this is for me. So I can connect to this, I can relate to this, and it's not scary, or, it's nothing that's going to drive anxiety when I walk into like a formal space. And then I think the second thing is the amount of confidence and self-esteem that it builds for children. Children love to play games and repeat those games. So then through that, they develop the sense of competence, the sense of mastery, they're trying new things, they feel like risk takers through play. In a very safe way, they're able to, overcome what might be something scary, like learning their numbers or learning their alphabets. But when they're doing that in a play-based way, they can achieve those goals with confidence. And then obviously through play, I think children are, developing essential social skills. They're cooperating, they're turn-taking, they're sharing, they're resolving conflicts, they're developing empathy. So I think through that, they'll negotiate. Now it's my turn. You've had 3 minutes. You had 2 turns. Those are all negotiation skills that they're learning through play, even just on a seesaw or on a swing, or, sharing some Play-Doh. And I think, they start to learn how to take other people's perspectives, even with simple role play games of like teacher, or pretending like they're at school, or being a mummy and a baby, and taking those roles. They're developing perspective sharing and how to foster positive relationships in and outside of the formal learning environment, or the play group or the cluster group. So I think there's a lot of research that shows that, but it's obviously demonstrated through the play groups and the cluster groups themselves as well.
That's brilliant. I know you have a lot of focus on mindfulness as well in Botswana, and I wondered if you could share some of the impacts of this approach on the children and communities you work with there.
So the mindful play approach that we developed was actually inspired by working in a refugee camp as well in Botswana. So when we started working there, exactly what Gemma was saying about the parent-child relationship and the inherited trauma that sometimes comes through is so difficult to navigate that the only way that we found through it was by practicing mindfulness. And we actually took adult mindfulness strategies like meditation, breathing exercises, practicing gratitude and kindness, and try to make them more age appropriate and playful in nature. And so we've created an entire curriculum around mindfulness approaches that are play-based. And what we've seen is, parents really want to do that with their children. So the parent involvement and the relationship strengthening that has fostered has been incredible, not just now in Dukwi, but now we've rolled it out to all of our 11 communities in Botswana. And in fact, there's one parent in particular that says, by doing these practices with my children, I've learned how to show love to my child. And it was just not that he didn't love his child before, but he didn't feel like a father in particular in the refugee camp didn't know how to express that to his toddler. And through the mindful play exercises, because we focus on kindness, acts of kindness, reflecting on gratitude and doing breathing techniques, doing yoga together, those are the kinds of strategies that they've been able to strengthen their relationship. But more than that, some of the outcomes that we see are enhanced concentration and learning in the play groups, because we start every day with a mindfulness activity, but we also use it as a transition. So if children have gone and had their toilet time or snack time and they come back, instead of coming back in this rush and chaos, when they come, before they're expected to do their next learning station, they first do a mindful transition into that. So the concentration, focus and learning that it's built, and the then improved behavior and relationships amongst teachers and children has been really powerful as well. And then, as you can imagine, if you practice any mindfulness, the emotional regulation, stress reduction, and just children happier to come into that learning environment. And so what we've seen is children, separate much more easily from their caregivers at drop-off time and coming in to the play group, because they know that it's going to be a calm start to the day. It's not going to be a crazy start to the day. It's not we're here to take attendance and we're here to do this. It's we're here to gather together in this peaceful way first before we go into anything else. So I think, and we haven't tracked our children long enough yet, but what I'm hoping is that it results in much more long-term well-being for our children, which, then eventually leads to building healthier, happier lives and relationships, and, carries on into their adulthood.
That's brilliant. I know that a lot of the primary school teachers we've interviewed in Kyaka have just really noticed the difference between the children that have had that foundation and the children that haven't, in the way that they interact with other friends in the classroom, the way that they kind of respond to the environment. So you can just sort of start to see those foundations coming into play even at those early stages. But Gemma, in Kyaka, I know Priyanka's been talking about Botswana, but we've talked about how we're providing the foundations for life for refugee children. How are we doing that? What are those foundations, and how are we doing that in two?
Well, we focus on making sure our children are ready to start school, and we do this by supporting them to become curious and interested, able to make friends, inquisitive, confident and able to express themselves, able to solve problems and think creatively, which is key, and physical development, including, for example, their hands developed through certain types of play, so they're ready to be able to write when they get to that stage.
So is that actually strengthening their hands in terms of like a physical thing?
Yeah, so this is from Sarah, by the way. So he's told me often about how parents really love the idea of children starting to write very early, so from the age of 3 or 4. But their hands are not developed properly at that time to be able to write. So it's better to have these kind of play-based learning opportunities to set up their surrounding skills and their physical ability to write. So that when it comes to learning to write, they're physically ready.
Brilliant.
So we achieve that support for those different elements in a number of different ways, through group activities, allowing time for child-led free play, and in particular we work hard to ensure that even the youngest children are given a voice and are valued and appreciated for who they are. And we give opportunities to them so that they can make their own choices, get to know themselves, learn about themselves, and express their feelings and ideas. And we know that if children are interested in the world around them and keen and excited to learn, they'll continue learning for the rest of their life, as Priyanka was saying.
That's brilliant. Solomon, I mentioned a little bit about the transition to primary school for our learners. Could you tell us a bit more about that and how they're getting on?
Yeah, thank you so much, Esther. Maybe to start with, we have had over 4,500 children that have graduated out of our program in the last 2 years, which I think is very remarkable. And we've had a number of interactions with their teachers in primary school, and they've really given us lots of interesting feedback. They've told us about how our learners are ready to learn in primary school, and you know, they've told us that they can speak English and they can understand better compared to the other colleagues that never attended early years education. And the other interesting bit is that they also know what they want to become in future, and the teachers found this quite unusual, that at their age they already have aspirations of what they want to become in the future. And so the teachers find this very inspiring, that these children already have hope of becoming somebody's at a certain point in their lives.
That's brilliant. And with 5,000 children, it's a lot of children. We're wanting to reach another 5,000, I think, as over the next year. I know that a big part of the program is about being sustainable. What does that look like? How do you build sustainability into the work?
Well, Esther, everything we do, we try to make sure that we ask ourselves whether it can be sustained by the community when we live. And there are quite a number of unique aspects about what we do, and one of them is using existing structures like people's homes, outdoor spaces, and this reduces the expenditure into construction and maintenance or rental costs. So we believe that this can easily be sustained by the community. The other interesting aspect is building capacity of local caregivers instead of bringing in caregivers from other places. We are equipping local caregivers with the skills to teach their very own children, and also empowering them to come up with management committees that are also refugees. So these are empowering the local people to continue the program in the future. The other is in view of the expensive, unsustainable salaries, which is the order of the day in the refugee setting. Our caregivers are enrolled into a loan scheme where they are supported. They're empowered, first of all, to start up businesses, and we hold their hand by giving them financial literacy trainings to be able to really have thriving businesses and be motivated enough to, you know, continue giving a service to their children. But also parents also are encouraged to start village savings and loans associations, and these are helping them to improve on their standards, because they can borrow money from these visitors and, you know, start up lucrative ventures. And in so doing, they have something to contribute to their children's learning at the cluster points.
So what kind of businesses have teachers and parents set up so far? Could you give us a few examples?
Well, numerous ones. Congolese are good with craft work, and so many of them have actually started some businesses at their homes, like weaving and doing all sorts of craft work, and they usually take these to Kampala. They have ready market in Kampala, and so, others have also are engaged in selling some of the fruits that they grow in their gardens. So it's you know, these simple businesses that actually make a big difference. Engaging in selling some merchandise and using their very own skills to come up with a livelihood.
That's brilliant. And so alongside with the loans, Kathura, you might need to unmute, but I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about the training program and the trainer of trainers and how that works.
Thank you, Esther. How we recruit that caregivers, that taught select the interested parents or people around the community with the help of the CLMCs and take them through the on-job training in the community or in the community child care, that is CCC, for a period of 6 to 9 months, where they train them in their zones. For example, in Kaborogota, you'll find that the Tot Ibrahim will train his caregivers during the week on a weekly basis. That is like on Thursday or Friday, they select their own days which are favorable for them. Then they are trained and satisfied later after the 9 months of training. And these are the caregivers we use at the cluster points.
And as they train and take ownership of the program and the parents get more involved, what do you see happening with community ownership and how it grows?
We see that now you will find that some parents are now picking up. Some parents are interested in becoming caregivers to their children. Then you find that the CLMCs, some of the CLMCs are part of the cluster parents.
The CLMCs are the management, the local management groups.
Yes.
CLMC.
Come again.
I was just explaining to the audience that CLMCs are the cluster learning management committees, and they're made up of local
yes. Thank you very much. They take responsibility.
Oh, I think we've lost Kathura.
Esther, can I just pick on from there?
Yes, thank you.
All right, thank you. So what really happens is that
take care.
The caregivers are selected by the community. Kauthar, are you back?
Yes.
Yeah, I was just augmenting what you had earlier on explained, that caregivers are selected from within the community. And what we do is we sensitize the community, and the community selects management committees that are going to run these study areas where the children are going to be learning from. And these management committees choose members within the community that are of good repute, and they recommend them for training as caregivers. So it's these caregivers that we train in a period of 9 months, and they later train the children in the community. Yeah.
Thank you, Solomon. Have you got anything else to add, Kathura?
I think Solomon has put it right the way I was putting them. Thank you.
done a good job. All these elements reduce reliance on short-term international funding. I think that's one of the key elements. They kind of ensure that refugee communities can provide this early years education for their children long into the future, with or without Children on the Edge. Children on the Edge Africa Learn to Play, that they can take this on for themselves and provide it long-lasting education. So that's the sustainability angle. We're going to talk a little bit more about the play-based angle now, especially talking about a new assessment tool. So I was going to ask Gemma, Children on the Edge have been working with Priyanka and the University of Chichester to develop a way of assessing the effectiveness of early years programming using play. And I wondered if you could tell us a bit more about how this has come about, Gemma. She's being a hero, stepping in for Sarah here. So perhaps Priyanka, you can chip in as well if you've got anything to add.
Well, we knew we wanted to be able to assess child development so that we could evaluate our programme and see how the teachers were doing, if everything was working, and find areas for improvement. And we were looking around for a kind of standard tool to use for assessing young children. And the only one we could really find was a tool called Idela, which is a sort of internationally recognised tool for assessing children's development. But when we tried to implement that and run the first assessment, we found that, first of all, the scoring just didn't really make any sense, and that kind of alerted us to the fact that there were issues with the tool. So we knew we had to change the scoring. Then we found that we weren't allowed to change things about the tool to use it. And then we looked a bit more closely at the actual activities and questions in the assessment tool, and we found that a lot of them didn't actually provide the information that it set out to do, and in addition, it was set up to be data collectors going into a community, and so the strangers basically to the children, and sitting with them and taking them through a series of tests really on their own. And that, if you know young children, that's just not a situation where they're going to display what they've learned or how they've developed. So we started working on a new tool, our own tool, which is completely, everything about it's meant for young children. So children are put into small groups, and they have a familiar adult, so usually their caregiver there, who facilitates a session and asks them and tells them what to do. And then they just do a number of play-based activities, and some of them are working together and some of them are individual, and they're not even aware that they're being assessed. And for each activity, they're assessed on multiple markers at the same time, markers of development at the same time. Yeah, there you go. That's
brilliant. It. I do remember when Sarah was introducing this concept, she sat us all down as a team in the UK and took us through some of these play-based assessment activities. And I can see how children, you know, we were all getting involved in building blocks and playing with clay, and before you know it, you're so absorbed, you don't know what's going on, let alone when you're a child and you're really excited by it all. So yeah, it's a brilliant approach. Priyanka, did you have anything to add about that development?
Not necessarily like to add differently, but I think, you know, just to say, like, when we were developing it, I think we had tried out another international tool. And so I think the first step that we came in there with, from both teams, was this was irrelevant for our context, right? For both Uganda and Botswana, either in terms of how resource heavy it was, how time intensive, how not child-centered it was, but also how it wasn't culturally relevant or contextually relevant. So I think that was the first step. That was that hat that we came in with, is how do we create a tool that is culturally relevant and sensitive, but also child-centered. And so I think when you're coming in from that perspective, then as soon as when you're designing for context, culture, and children, and that's a huge, it's a hugely different approach to standardized global assessment tools otherwise. And I think that's what's made it really successful. We took all that feedback from the TOTs in Uganda, from our mamas in Botswana, from our assessors, and the facilitators themselves on what's really going to work. And then we tested it, and we got more feedback from those same people, and refined it again. And I think, just doing that by engaging all those key people in the whole process from the beginning helped us to build trust. It helped us to gain insights into the needs and priorities of the actual educators and the program. So this tool was built to evaluate the program as opposed to evaluate the children. And I think that's really key, is at no point are we looking here to see, is this child passing or failing? Is this child really ready for grade 1 or school ready? I think what we're trying to see is our program effective in fostering early learning in this very positive and holistic way? And there are multiple ways to do that. There is child development that has to be a part of it, absolutely, but it's not the only part. There's also the environment, there's the resources that are being used, there's the child safeguarding approach, there's the teaching and learning, and I think all of that's been put together in this tool that has really been designed for international education program in informal settings that otherwise I've never seen a tool do.
That's amazing. So what is the impact on the children that you've seen of this assessment, as in when you've sat in on it, the different activities?
Yeah, I think, one is exactly what Gemma was saying. The children don't even realize they're being assessed. And the key there is that the child's educator is the one facilitating the activity. So the person that they see and trust every day. And they're not the ones assessing, but they're trained specifically to facilitate these activities without giving them too many prompts or clues or instruction and guidance. So there is rigorous training to the educators on what this is about, why we're doing it, and what we're trying to achieve from it, so that they're not leading the responses from the children in any way. But the assessors are actually independent. So the assessors are not, whilst they might be TOTs or part of our core M&E team here in Botswana, they're not actually people who have any bias towards making sure that these children are ticking all the boxes. And they've also received independent training on the tool and the purpose behind the tool. And I think that was really important. So we trained, as Learn to Play, we trained all our educators and assessors here in Botswana, but we also trained the TOTs and caregivers in Uganda, just so that, again, that training was streamlined and doesn't have that variability, so that the tool, then you can really validate its relevance and effectiveness. And the results that we've seen are, that it's far more efficient, in terms of time, cost of human resource in doing these assessments, but that the children are actually enjoying them. And I think, I don't know where you hear that. Where do you hear children having fun during assessment? And part of that is the design, right? It's designed to look like a child's normal day at their cluster group or play group. So it follows the same routines of their circle times, of their play stations, of a closing circle before they leave, and it fits into the same daily routine time. So it's no additional time that's needed to assess these children other than the time that they're meant to be at their learning center anyway. And so I think, from the development side to now, we've done a full pilot, and this year will be our kind of full-scale implementation in both countries. I think we've used this so much for fine-tuning and learning and gathering feedback, but I think so far it's been really positive all round. And I think what's really important is we've seen that it's got this ability to capture a very holistic view of child development through play, and that's the other really important part. It's child development through play, and that's how we're capturing it, not child development independent to play, and how that's aligned to educational goals in both countries.
That's brilliant. So Gemma, could you tell us a bit about the next steps for this tool?
Yeah, the tool's currently being assessed and verified by a team of early years experts at the University of Chichester. And then once the tool's been finalised, we'll hold a wider pilot and we'll be working alongside other selected international organisations. But we hope that a final iteration of the tool will be available for wider use in 2025.
That's brilliant. So obviously our panelists have been talking about the assessment tool, and we wanted to kind of bring it alive a bit by showing you a quick video, so you can get a glimpse of what it's like to take part in a play-based assessment. So I'll hand over to Gemma Gilpin to play that for you. Hope that gives you a bit of an insight. Solomon, I wondered if you could tell me, we've talked a bit about the future of the play-based tool itself, but could you let us know what the next steps are for the cluster programme as a whole? I think we might have lost you.
Sorry, we had muted. Thanks, Esther. We have had a lot of learnings in Zone 1 to 5, and we have really tested a number of changes, and learned that in as much as we have been engaging the community, but we really need to engage them more. If anything, just give them the will to drive us around while we just guide them on where to go. So we just want to next month to do a census, to do a complete count of all the children 3 to 6, to just try and understand what the need looks like in terms of magnitude. How many children can access early years learning in Zone 6 to 10, and what is the unmet need? And after that, we will go on to penetrate the community, to have these so many sensitizations with the parents, to first of all get an understanding of why they need to, their children need to have early years education. And after that, we also want to empower them with the Village Savings and Loans Association arrangement, such that they can start saving and contributing to their children's learning, which will begin in 2025, February.
It's exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you, Solomon. At our audience, do you have any questions you'd like to pose to the panel? You could either put your hand up using the raise your hand function, or type it in the chat. I think all questions have been answered then. Well, thank you very much to the panel. Thank you to Gemma for sharing the video as well. If you'd like to know anything more, if a question does spring to your mind, then do email us at communications@childrenontheedge.org. Gemma's going to put that link in the chat. And if you'd like to know more about the play-based assessment that Priyanka and Gemma were describing, Sarah, who couldn't join us this evening, was she's written a blog, and she's part of a video where we've interviewed her about it, and Priyanka and Solomon, and I've got a lot of footage about how that was developed. So we're going to put that in the chat as well. I'd recommend that you read a bit more of that. And oh, somebody told me that there is a chat. There is a question in the chat. Somebody's typing. Paula Louise. This is probably a question for Solomon. You mentioned the children learn English, but what about their native languages? You're on mute.
Thank you so much, Esther. And in our clusters, we make sure that children learn in their local language, and the language that is predominantly used in Kyaka Refugee II settlement is Swahili, and so most of the sessions are conducted in Swahili. But what I meant by English is that when you get to primary school level, the language of instruction is English. But also we have learned over time that when the children get to understand their language better, they actually speak and understand English better. So that was the whole revelation that these teachers are trying to tell us, that the learners that are coming from cluster learning understand and speak English better, which I think is something that has encouraged us to have to make sure that we continue doing what we do, having all cluster learning sessions conducted in the mother tongue of the children, which is Swahili.
Yeah, brilliant. Gemma, can you tell us a bit about how you've used imagery to monitor the programme with the communities?
Oh, yeah, well, Paula Louise is from Their World, and we got some advice. We were working with Their World for some time, and we got some advice from their monitoring and evaluation expert, and that was that it's how important it is to feed back to the community that you're working with. So, for example, if you do focus group discussions, it's so important that you feed back to the community what you've heard from them and what you've learned, and preferably in their language. So we've really taken that on board with lots of different elements of this programme, but also with our other programmes as much as possible. We're trying to push for this at the moment. It's a work in progress. But last year we created a graphics-based handout for Kyaka II to demonstrate the theory of change, our theory of change, so that they knew, which is basically our plan of how we think that our activities are going to produce the impact that we would like, short-term, medium and long-term. And so this graphics-based handout showed them what our intentions were, what we were trying to do, and what we hoped for their communities in the future if we could work with them effectively. But it also incorporated elements of what we'd learned from them in focus group discussions, and what we'd heard from them. And apparently it got a good response. I think Marble's on the call, and she was describing that everyone was really excited to see this. And the reason for having it graphics based with just a few words in Swahili was because many of the people that we're working with are illiterate.
That's brilliant. Thanks, Jem. Patricia's also asked how Children on the Edge receive sustainable support, or is everything international aid? So we have a wide base of support at Children on the Edge UK, and Children on the Edge Africa is a sister organisation, our local partners. So as mentioned at the start, we've currently got funding from players of Postcode, People's Postcode Lottery and Coles Medlock through the Big Give, but also a wide base of funding from individuals, regular donors. We really rely on people running marathons, doing challenge events. Lots of people contribute to this programme and are part of seeing the impact that we're describing this evening. Patricia's also asked, do we use local experts in early childhood who are based in Uganda? I guess that would be for Solomon.
Pardon me, Esther, on that?
Do we use local experts in early childhood who are based in Uganda? Ugandans or mainly UK experts?
No, actually, the early years education department is, I think, apart from Sarah, the rest are Ugandan. At the moment, we have 3 experts, if I may just borrow the word experts, that are supporting our trainers of trainers and equipping them with the necessary skills to train caregivers. And those are within Kyaka Refugee II settlement.
Yes, we have a great team.
Yeah, but we also usually have other experts that come in and support, like the consultant who, you know, helps with the trainer of trainers training, the TOT training. Yeah, he's Ugandan, and he comes in and supports our program officers who are charged with this docket of early childhood education.
That's brilliant. Helen Pattinson is writing a comment here. She's our trustee, and she says, I just want to say a huge thanks to Solomon, Kathura and Priyanka and all the Children on the Edge team for sharing their insights. The Cluster Learning Programme makes me super proud, and it's brilliant to hear how well it's going. Thank you, Helen. That's really nice. And thank you, Patricia, for your questions as well. Patricia is working with Their World, who are also developing ECD project in Kyaka II. So they are going to get in touch. And if anybody else wants to know anything more, like I said, just email us at communications@childrenontheedge.org. I think that is going in the chat along with the link to Sarah's blog and video. And we'll also make sure the recording's available and sent through soon if you'd like to share it with anyone. And all that remains, I think, is to say thank you so much for coming this evening. We really appreciate you giving your time, and we appreciate your interest. And a huge thank you to the panel for joining us. And we hope the rest of your evening is enjoyable, and we will see you next time. Thank you very much.